The girl tugged the sleeve of his jacket just as the cashier said, "I'm sorry, sir. Your card didn't go through." The words hung there, heavier than the cold air spilling from the open freezer doors. He didn't look at the screen. He didn't look at the line behind him. He looked down at the small hand gripping his sleeve, knuckles pale, fingers trembling like she might let go if he moved too fast. The conveyor belt kept humming. A carton of eggs bumped softly into a loaf of bread. Somewhere, a freezer door slammed shut. The cashier cleared her throat and reached for the receipt that hadn't printed. "I can try it again," she said, already holding the card between two fingers. The man didn't answer. His shoulders stiffened, then sank, as if something inside him had finally decided to stop fighting. He exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled, the way you do when you're trying not to let a moment swallow you whole. Behind him, someone shifted their weight. A shopping cart squeaked. A child coughed. The girl tightened her grip and looked up at him, eyes wide, not crying, just watching. Waiting. He nodded once, almost to himself. "That's okay," he said quietly, though no one had asked him anything yet. The cashier paused, confused. "Sir?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, opened it with careful hands. There were a few bills folded flat, edges worn thin. He slid them forward on the counter, smoothing them as if they might wrinkle under pressure. "For hers," he said, and nodded toward the girl. The girl froze. Her hand loosened, just enough for him to feel it. The cashier looked from the money to his face, then to the child, then back again. The line behind them went silent. The receipt finally printed, slow and deliberate, the paper curling as it emerged. No one moved. He jogged the same path every night, not because he liked it, but because it delayed the moment he had to unlock the door to an apartment that felt too quiet. The park loop was uneven, cracked in places, bordered by lampposts that flickered just enough to make the shadows feel alive. His breathing stayed steady, measured. He counted steps instead of thoughts. During the day, he was careful. Careful with money, careful with words, careful with the way he moved through rooms that still held the outline of another life. He planned meals down to the last slice of bread, folded laundry the same way every time, and set alarms he never needed. Control was easier than memory. There was a weight he carried that never showed on his face. Not anger. Not even sadness, exactly. More like a quiet responsibility he hadn't chosen but refused to drop. Some nights, when the jog ended and he stood at the crosswalk waiting for the light to change, he felt it pressing against his ribs, asking to be acknowledged. He always looked away before it could speak. He avoided thinking about the night that split his life into before and after. He didn't revisit it, didn't tell it like a story. It lived instead in small habits. The extra lock check, the way he paused before answering questions, the instinct to say, "It's fine," even when it wasn't. Especially when it wasn't. Back at the apartment, he would stretch by the window, watching other lights turn off one by one. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Somewhere else, a television murmured. Life went on, close enough to hear, far enough not to touch. If you've ever held yourself together by routine alone, you already understand him. And maybe that's why stories like this matter, quiet ones, about ordinary moments that don't announce their importance when they happen. Sometimes it's enough just to stay with them, to see where a small choice can lead, even when no one expects it to matter at all. The cashier scanned the last item and slid it toward the bagging area. The beep echoed too loudly in the narrow checkout lane, as if the store had decided to listen in on his thoughts. He stood there with both hands resting on the metal edge of the counter, fingers spread, breathing slow, eyes fixed on the conveyor belt. Behind him, a woman cleared her throat. "Excuse me," she said softly. He didn't turn at first. The word excuse landed wrong, brushing against something already raw. He adjusted his stance, then looked over his shoulder. She stood close enough that he could smell laundry soap on her jacket. Her cart held only a few things: a small box of cereal, apples in a thin plastic bag, and a carton of milk balanced carefully at the front. She didn't meet his eyes right away. "I'm short," she said, holding up her wallet as if it could explain itself. Her fingers shook when she opened it. "Just one thing. The milk." The cashier paused, scanner hovering midair. The line behind them seemed to lean forward all at once. He felt heat rise to his face, the familiar tightening in his chest that came whenever a decision was expected of him without warning. He looked at the milk. White plastic, condensation gathering along the sides. He thought of his daughter's cereal bowls in the morning, how she tilted the carton too far and always spilled a little on the counter. He thought of the envelope at home with the electric bill folded inside, waiting. It was a small amount. He knew that. Small enough to dismiss. Large enough to notice. The woman swallowed. "It's okay if you can't," she added quickly. "I can put it back." She reached for the carton before he had time to answer. Something in him resisted that movement. Not loudly. Not bravely. Just enough to register. He glanced down at his wallet, already thinner than he liked it to be. He imagined opening it later, counting again, adjusting dinner plans, making it work. He imagined the quiet pride of saying no and walking away untouched. The cashier shifted her weight, eyes flicking between them. A child somewhere nearby started to cry. He exhaled, slow, controlled, the same way he did at the end of his nightly jogs. "It's fine," he said. The words surprised him as much as they did the woman. He nodded once, a small, decisive motion, as if that made it less of a question. "I can cover it." The woman froze, her hand still on the milk. She looked up at him now, really looked, as if trying to confirm he was real. "Are you sure?" He didn't answer. He slid the carton back toward the scanner instead. The cashier scanned it. Beep. The sound settled something in his chest and unsettled something else entirely. The woman murmured thank you, voice barely there. He stared straight ahead, feeling the weight of the choice land quietly, permanently, like a door closing somewhere he couldn't see. Nothing grand had happened. No one applauded. The line moved forward. But as the receipt printed and the milk disappeared into a plastic bag, he had the unsettling sense that something small had shifted, and that it would not shift back. The next morning began the way most of them did, quiet, careful, measured. He stood at the narrow kitchen counter spreading peanut butter onto bread, while his daughter swung her legs from the chair, humming to herself. The apartment smelled like coffee and toasted crusts. Outside the window, the sky was still pale, undecided. He wrapped the sandwich in wax paper, folded it twice, and slid it into her backpack. She reached for her shoes, one sock already slipping off her heel. Everything was moving on time until it wasn't. "Dad," she said, her voice small, already late. "The bus." They stepped outside just in time to see it turn the corner, yellow and final. He lifted his hand out of instinct, knowing it wouldn't stop. His daughter's shoulders dropped. She tried not to cry, and that effort hurt more than tears would have. "It's okay," he said, though his chest tightened. "We'll figure it out." She started down the steps too fast, missed one, and slipped. Her knee met the concrete with a dull sound that made him flinch. She sat there, stunned, staring at the scrape blooming red across her skin. He crouched beside her, checking, blowing softly, murmuring reassurances he had memorized. "I can help." The voice came from behind them. He turned, already guarded. It was the woman from the supermarket. She stood a few steps away, holding her keys, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She looked uncertain, as if ready to disappear if he said no. "The bus loops back around the block," she said. "I've seen it. I can walk her to the stop on Pine Street. It waits longer there." He hesitated. The moment stretched. His daughter looked between them, hopeful, trusting without knowing why. After a beat, he nodded. They walked together, the three of them, the morning cool and quiet. The woman held his daughter's hand, careful not to squeeze too hard. They reached the stop just as the bus pulled up again. His daughter climbed aboard, turned, and waved, her knee already forgotten. "Thank you," he said. She smiled, brief and tired. "Anytime." The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Mornings of packed lunches and forgotten homework. Evenings of quiet dinners and scraped knees cleaned at the sink. Sometimes he saw the woman in the hallway, sometimes at the mailbox. They exchanged nods. Nothing more. Silence grew familiar between them, not awkward, just present. His daughter started mentioning her casually. "She says hi. She likes apples too." One afternoon, a folded piece of paper appeared on the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a star. A drawing. 3 figures holding hands. One taller than the others. He stared at it longer than he meant to. That night, as he was washing dishes, there was a knock at the door. The drawings began appearing without ceremony. One in the morning, crooked and bright, held to the refrigerator by the same star magnet. Another in the afternoon, slid under a notebook on the kitchen table. Stick figures, uneven houses, a sun drawn too close to the ground. He didn't ask about them. He noticed them, that was all. When his daughter wasn't looking, he smoothed the paper flat, pressing out the creases with his thumb before tucking them into a drawer meant for spare batteries and take-out menus. Routine adjusted itself around the quiet addition. Breakfast stayed simple. Shoes lined up by the door. His daughter lingered longer in the hallway some mornings, tying and readying her laces, as if waiting for something that didn't always arrive. That afternoon, he heard a knock. It was light, almost hesitant. He paused at the sink, hands still wet, listening. The second knock came softer than the first. He wiped his hands on a towel and opened the door partway. The woman stood there holding a small white cup, empty, both hands wrapped around it like it might slip away. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know this is strange. I just ran out of rice." He blinked, processing the ordinariness of the request. He glanced down the hallway, then back at her. She stood close enough that he could see a faint bruise on her wrist, yellowed at the edges, already fading. "You live here," he said, more statement than question. "2 doors down," she replied. "I should have said something earlier." Something tightened in his chest. He hadn't noticed. Or maybe he had and chosen not to name it. He stepped back to get the rice. When he returned, his daughter was already there, holding a new drawing up against the wall with both palms stretching on her toes. The picture showed the same 3 figures, closer together this time. The woman froze when she saw it. So did he? "She likes to draw," the woman said quietly, as if apologizing. He handed over the rice. Their fingers brushed. He pulled his hand back too quickly. "How long have you been watching us?" he asked. The question landed harder than he intended. The woman's face fell, confusion giving way to hurt. "I wasn't," she said. I walked by. We share the hallway." Silence filled the space. His daughter sensed it, stepped back from the wall, eyes moving between them. He nodded once, stiff. "Right." The woman swallowed, then forced a small smile. "Thank you for the rice." She left with the cup held carefully against her chest. That evening, he took the drawings from the drawer and lined them up on the table, studying them as if they might explain something he had missed. He felt foolish, then guilty for feeling foolish at all. The next day, As he walked home from work, he saw her sitting on the low wall by the public square, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing in particular. The square was quieter than usual that evening. The fountain at its center sputtered unevenly, water catching the last light of the day before falling back into the basin. He slowed his pace when he saw her there, seated on the low concrete edge, shoulders drawn in, eyes fixed on the ground as if it might offer answers. He meant to keep walking. Instead, he stopped a few steps away. She looked up when his shadow crossed her shoes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. A child ran past chasing a pigeon, laughter trailing behind. The sound felt distant, almost misplaced. "I'm sorry," he said finally. The words came out rougher than he expected. "About yesterday." She nodded, but didn't meet his eyes. "It's fine." They stood there, the space between them filled with things that hadn't been said. His gaze drifted to her hands. The faint bruise was still there, more visible now in the open light. "You waiting for someone?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just resting." He sat down on the edge of the fountain, close enough to feel the cool mist on his face. The city hummed around them, cars passing, voices overlapping, life continuing without regard for their stillness. "My daughter draws a lot," he said, "when she's trying to make sense of something." That got her attention. She turned then, really turned, and something in her expression softened. Not relief. Recognition. "I had a daughter," she said. The sentence hung between them, incomplete. He waited. "She's with her father now," she continued. "Since the divorce. 3 months ago." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands twisted in her lap. "The court said it was temporary." "But temporary stretches." He nodded, feeling the weight of the word settle somewhere familiar. "I used to walk her to school," she said. "Every morning. Same corner, same bus. After she left, I didn't know where to put myself in the mornings anymore." It explained the hallway, the grocery store, the way she watched his daughter without speaking. "I work at a printing shop," she went on. "Or I did. They haven't paid me in weeks. I keep going in because if I don't, I disappear completely." The fountain sputtered again, then steadied. He stared at the water, at the way it kept trying. His chest tightened, not with pity, but with understanding sharp enough to hurt. The drawings, the rice, the milk, none of it had been about him. "She looks like her," the woman said quietly. "Your daughter. Just for a second sometimes." He swallowed. A breeze moved through the square, lifting the corner of a flyer taped to a nearby pole. He stood, unsure what to do with the space her words had opened. "I should go," she said, already pushing herself up. He watched her step back, the distance returning, heavier now that he knew what it meant. That night, he stood in his kitchen staring at the refrigerator, at the drawings held in place by the star magnet, and wondered what it would mean to let someone stay. The parking lot was half empty, washed in the soft orange of a lowering sun. Long shadows stretched beneath the cars, bending and thinning as the light shifted. He stood beside his car with the driver's door open, one hand resting on the roof, waiting for his daughter to finish tying her shoe. The woman approached from between two parked vehicles, moving slowly, as if unsure whether she was allowed to cross the remaining distance. She stopped a few steps away, close enough to be seen, far enough to leave him an exit. "I've been thinking," she said. He closed the car door gently, the sound echoing louder than it should have. His daughter straightened up and watched them, quiet, observant, already sensing that this moment was not meant for her to interrupt. "I can help after school," the woman continued. "I changed my shift. I can be there when the bus drops her off." He looked past her toward the fading sky, buying himself a second. His instinct was to decline, to keep the fragile balance he had built untouched. Help came with weight, with obligation, with the risk of loss. "I'm not asking for money," she added quickly. "Just time. A place to stay for a bit. Until I get back on my feet." The words settled between them, heavier than the groceries ever had been. He imagined his apartment at night. The narrow hallway. The extra lock check. The routines that kept him safe and alone. He imagined his daughter's drawings, the way they had multiplied, filling spaces he hadn't known were empty. She waited without pressing, hands clasped in front of her, eyes lowered. It wasn't a plea. It was an offering, uncertain and fragile. His daughter stepped closer to him, her small hand finding his wrist. She didn't look at the woman. She looked up at him. He felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the urge to retreat, to protect what little he could control. And beneath it, something new. A steadiness he hadn't noticed before. He nodded once. Not in agreement. In acceptance. "We'll try it," he said. The woman looked up, startled. Relief flickered across her face, then something like disbelief. She nodded back, careful not to move too fast, as if sudden motion might undo it. His daughter smiled, just a little, then let go of his wrist and climbed into the car. As he drove away, the parking lot shrinking in the rearview mirror, he realized the fear hadn't vanished. It had simply been joined by something else. At home that night, he stood in the doorway of the spare room, light on, door open, and understood that the next morning would not feel the same. Payoff. 2 weeks later, the morning light poured gently through the kitchen window, casting soft rectangles on the tiled floor. The quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint hiss of the coffee maker were the only sounds until a spoon clinked against a ceramic bowl. His daughter giggled, a low, bright sound that bounced off the cabinets as she balanced the last bite of cereal. Across the table, the woman stirred her own bowl, careful, methodical, as if each motion confirmed her place in the small rhythm of the room. She had moved in the week after the parking lot conversation, the keys to her old apartment handed over to a new tenant without ceremony. The arrangement had settled into the familiar quiet of shared mornings. No grand announcement, no ceremony, only the practical comfort of presence. He poured his coffee and paused, watching the two of them. She nudged a cereal box toward his daughter, who reached for it without needing to ask. Their small gestures, passing butter, wiping crumbs, tying a shoelace, spoke louder than words ever could. He realized, again, how much weight these tiny, ordinary actions carried, how easily they built trust and belonging. Outside, the street was waking. A car rolled past, footsteps echoed against the pavement, a neighbor's dog barked briefly. Inside, nothing extraordinary happened. Yet everything felt different. The apartment felt warmer, quieter in the right way, safe in a way he hadn't allowed himself to feel in months. He set down his mug, listening to the soft scraping of spoons and the low hum of conversation between his daughter and the woman. A calm settled over him, steady, unspoken, and he understood that these ordinary shared moments, was the change that mattered. And for the first time in a long while, he looked forward to tomorrow, knowing they would greet it together,